All right, so I want to go over today the rendering stuff for this guy. Okay, I went over shaders last time and some lights. Just so you're aware too, lab hours are posted, so if you do need to come into lab, make sure you check the lab times. If you want to come in on a Monday or Wednesday and there's an open seat, I'm here all day, so feel free. Monday coming up, we are not here, so remember that we skipped that. Okay.
How about Tuesday, Thursday?
Tuesday, Thursdays, this room is open all day. There's a class at 5, but Billy, who's here, he should have some open seats, and he's usually pretty accommodating. So, originally I planned to take this model into Keyshot and show you the workflow of doing that. The way that I rigged this, though, does not allow me to do that as easily as I was hoping. Okay, I'm still going to show you the process of how we could take a regular animation in, but this one, because I have basically a NURB surface converted to a polygon, it doesn't like that at all. Okay, and it's not the exporting, it's just Keyshot itself. There's ways around it, but it's like not worth the hassle. So first thing, I'm going to show you how to render it inside of Maya, and then you can see how to render it inside of, or how to render stuff, or take stuff out of here into Keyshot. So I'm going to go to my render settings. Always give your stuff a name, and I recommend giving it your name. So my name is Sarcona, so I put Sarcona there, and then I put what it is. Tower, Game of Thrones, whatever you want to call this. The little gear clapper right here. Okay. For what we're doing with these, you can save these as EXRs, but realistically, you're not going to do anything fancy with them yet. So you're fine saving them as JPEG, saving them as PNG, or saving them as TIFFs. Okay, JPEG, PNG, or TIFF. What else? We're rendering out an animation, so we need to make sure we choose name.number.extension. Okay, when we were in Cinema, we chose the same thing. That way, After Effects will know, hey, you're rendering out a sequence. When it says Sarcona _ Game of Thrones .0005 .tiff, that means that that's frame 5. So we have to make sure that we have that name.number.extension. If you don't put the correct one here, sometimes you have to go through however many frames you've rendered out and either manually rename them or re-render it out. Okay, so make sure you pick the name.number.extension. Frame padding you don't need to worry about. You put your start frame, you put your end frame. For me, my end frame is, I'm going to say 200. That's plenty. Whoops. Here is my camera 1. That's the one that I set up. I'll show you how to set that up in a second. I didn't do that last time. My resolution, and these are on your cheat sheet too, 960 by 540. Okay, so you don't have to remember that. You should remember it, but you don't have to. Under the Arnold Renderer button, this is where you're going to put in the quality settings. Okay, so it's going to render out 960 by 540, but the quality of those pixels inside there is set up inside this arena. So the premise of this, if you were in the Maya classes before, we basically had one slider. If you remember that from RenderMan, it's just like one slider, better or worse. In Arnold, they break it up into all the individual pieces. So if you see that your specular is a little bit grainy, you can up just the specular, and that will help the overall render because obviously just the specular needed it. With the one in RenderMan, you're basically upping everything at once. Okay, so with this, typically you're going to take this camera AA to like 4 or 5. I'll probably leave it at 5 just because we have some motion going on. Now look up here at these samples. So if I put this back to 3, see how we're at 117, and then I put this to 5, and then it goes up to 325. So that tells you that you don't want to go crazy with these numbers, like cranking it up to 20 or 30. It's going to basically multiply all of these numbers there. Especially here, if I start pulling all these numbers up, look at how many samples are now getting in there. Okay? In the last class that we were just in, we were in Substance Painter, not Monday, but modeling class. We were in Substance Painter, and we were rendering something, and the max samples it got to was like 10 or something, right? Or 20, okay? So 5,000 is a lot for that to do. So these are typically at 2 unless you see a specific need for them. Some things like subsurface scattering, SSS, it's not even there, so I don't even really need that. Volume indirect, I don't really have anything there, so I can turn that off. Transmission, I don't think I have anything there. Alright, so these 3 should be good. That should be good. I do want some motion blur. I do think it is helpful if you are looking at these. My motion blur. Solid Angle has some really good manuals for all of their stuff. So not just this stuff, but everything. Where they actually will show you what each button does with a little example. So you're like, what does deformation do? This is what deformation does. Okay? Just so you're aware of it, apart from this, if an object just moves, I take my box here and it moves from here to here, there's no deformation happening to the surface. Okay? However, if it's jelly and it's smashed against the wall and it does this like little splattery type thing, that's a deformation. So depending on what kind of animation you have is the kind that you would want. For this, there's no deformation happening, but I click it anyway just in case how it's perceiving this because it's actually moving the vertices. And the same thing here. It may perceive that as a deformation, so I'm just going to leave deformation on there. Okay. Camera motion blur means the camera will be motion blurred. Oops, we'll get to that in a second. Keys is a look at this here. If you have an item that's animated like this, okay, so here's what the animation actually does, and you only have 2 keys, what it's going to do is it's going to put a keyframe, let's say here, and a keyframe there. So that animation will look like this when it's rendered out. It's like the perfect sound effect. So it'll look like that. So it won't look like it's going up a nice hill and coming down. If I put 3 keys, it'll add more detail to that. If I add 8 keys in this case, or whatever they put in here, they'll see a lot more. So as you look at this, you may see like, hey, my object is moving in a nice arc, but it looks like it's kind of dotted. You would just up the amount of keys there, and that would help that, okay? 2 for this should be fine because I really don't have anything moving in a huge arc, okay? Or I don't really have a lot of motion on this. Their stuff that was moving quick, you're really going to see that motion blur effect. This stuff is pretty subtle. Remember, we animated everything kind of slow, so it's not going to move as fast as this stuff. All right. Shutter controls, position. So when we do a motion blur, it could either blur the object in the center of the frame, before the frame, or after the frame, okay? Depending on what you want to look like. So here it is with this ball, and this is on the start of the frame. Here it is at the center of the frame, and here it is at the end of the frame. Okay? So what that means is, this is where the ball is, and it's blurring this way. So basically it's like blurring in front of itself, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. This one here is on the center of the frame, so there's some blur in front of the object and some blur behind the object. And then the last one, the object is here and there's a blur behind it. That one makes the most sense. As the object's moving, there should be like a blurry trail following behind it. Alright? You can also customize it. Let's see, you need to customize it at this point. So I always set mine to end of frame. And then for length, it's just how much blur you actually want to happen. Okay? So with 0, you're not going to get any blur. With 0.5, you're going to get some. And with 1, you're going to get a whole lot. Okay? Now, if you have an object that's moving slowly, you're not going to get a lot of blur no matter what you set that to. But if an object is moving fast, like a helicopter blade or a fan like they're showing, you need to have that blur set up all the way. Otherwise, it's going to look odd. It's not going to look like that big circle that you would typically see when you see a helicopter flying. All right? So I set mine to 1. 1 wasn't a huge difference, but it did add a little bit more to it because my stuff was moving so slow. I don't think I need anything else inside here. No, leave that. Yeah, that's fine there. Okay. There's more stuff inside here. You know, we'll play with some of it, not all of it, because it's more of an animation class anyway. That should be good. Okay. So now I can save this, and then I can go to render it. All right. If you want watermarked render, you would just go to render and say batch render. Okay. Like I talked about before, Arnold free version with Maya will render with a watermark. Okay. That's like the crappy version of it. You click this little script editor button, and you'll see it says rendering with Arnold. And so what it's going to do is it's just going to render each frame. So render frame 1, 2, 3, all the way to 200, and it's going to save it into your folder. So on mine, it's right here and here. Right there. Okay, so this is one that I did last night. And you can see the watermark. Okay, so it's pretty ugly. Alright, so if you don't want the watermark, this is what you do. I'll put this up on the server. This is a script that someone put on High-End 3D, I think that's where I found it. And basically all you have to do is just change your start and end frame here. So inside the render settings, there was that start and end. I'm going to put this one here. I'm not going to go to 200 in the demo because it'll actually force me to go to 200. I'm going to go to 5. Okay? And I'm going to grab everything. So what you're going to do is you're going to get this script. It'll be in a text file. You're just going to copy it. Whoops. What? No. You're going to do your full range. Okay. You're going to click on the little script editor button. Make sure you're on Python, and then you're going to paste the script there, highlight everything after you've changed the numbers, and then hit Control Enter. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to open up the Arnold renderer, and it's going to render frame 1 inside my viewport, and then it'll render frame 2 inside my viewport, and then frame 3 inside my viewport. If we do viewport rendering, we don't get the watermark. So we won't have a watermark. It's like a workaround so that we don't get it. That's the purpose of it. Right, you do. But to run it, you have to highlight everything and then hit Control Enter. Okay. So then once this is done, it's actually going to end up in a different spot. And this is the worst part of it because I don't really have like it's running right now. Maya's frozen up. I can't do anything inside my Maya. I can go to my task manager. I can go to performance. Nope, processes. I can find Maya right here. I can see that it's definitely doing something. There's a lot of processor power being used. There's a lot of memory being used. But I can't do anything on my station with Maya because it's basically taken over. This is what sucks about it, that we can't do anything, but that's what it is, okay, if you don't want the watermark. But what's cool is that we won't have the watermark, all right? So what should happen is it should go probably into our temp folder. There it is. So it's done frame 1, it's done frame 2, and if I double-click one of these, sure. There it is, gorgeous. Okay, no watermark. It's still thinking. Let's see if there's any way I could close this down. I think if I hit escape, that's what it is. If I'm back in Maya and I hit escape a bunch of times, there we go. Then it does stop it.
So where's the script editor button?
Right down here under the running man.
Ah, right.
Yep. Okay. So that will render out your stuff without a watermark if you would like that. Okay. To add the camera in there, you can just go to Create Camera. You click on this little blue circle here. And then I go to Panels, Perspective, and I change to Camera 2. So now I'm looking through that camera. And I basically just want to set up my scene. What does this entire shot look like? Okay, I have action going on. What do I want that rendering to look like? Typically, you're going to put your stuff out here so you can, get somewhat close to it. I probably want to come over here to the channel box and maybe make the focal length like 20. You can also go higher, so I can go not that high. You can go to like 60. Okay, so you can play around with the focal length. One's going to make everything look more like fisheye. The other one's going to make everything look more flat. If I go to 20 here and I'm on this side, you can see how I really add some depth to it, right? So let's say that I want to end my camera shot here. So I'm just going to grab my attributes, hit S to set my key. Remember, we set that up last time, so as long as we saved our preferences from last time, that should be still carried over. I'm going to rewind, and then I'm going to set up my start of this. So I can kind of see where this is going to go. Don't make a huge move with the camera. Just like your other stuff, nice and smooth. Set another key, and then hit play. Oops, I missed that thing, so I want to fix that. So that looks pretty good. I just want to fix that thing that I don't see right there. So maybe I'll pull this up a little bit more. There we go. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Okay. Now we do want to always edit our graphs for our cameras. Okay. If this was a one-off piece, we're just showing this as a one piece that the world is going to see. The stuff is already set up perfectly, okay? It has a nice ease in, some nice movement throughout, and a nice ease out. But the problem is you're going to want to put this in your demo reel, and you probably don't want to have your cameras slowly moving in and slowly moving out, because what happens is it looks like it's the start of an animation and the end of an animation, okay? So what we want to do is give it the appearance that it's already being animated, like it's part of a bigger scene, right? Imagine you've seen those videos, cameras flying over the water, right? Harry Potter's had them, bunches of movies have had them. Well, imagine you see that and it's picking up speed, okay? Instead of just being like a direct cut and you're flying into the water, it's like stopped and then we're gradually picking up speed. You lose some of the momentum of that, okay? So with my camera selected, I'm going to go to my graph editor. I'm just going to grab these ones, hold shift, grab these ones, and just make these linear by clicking that. Okay? I shouldn't need to touch this. That's already nice and smooth. So that's going to transition nicely. That's fine. But I need to make sure that the start of this doesn't ease into it and the end of it doesn't ease out of it. Okay? So now we get this motion. Do you see how it didn't pick up speed? It's just like, boom, there it is. So it feels like it's already part of another shot. Cool. Now you could have one at the end too. That's not a big deal, but I like to have it like that. All right. So then I would go and either batch render through this, or I would run my little script. Control Enter, batch render it. Okay. So that's how you would do your stuff through Maya. Okay. With this project, we cannot go through KeyShot. All right. I'll show you what it does, just so you can see. And then I'll show you how we can bring stuff out of there. I didn't want to take that out. There we go. Okay. So the idea here is that we want to take this animation out of here. Now, in the previous classes, we've taken parts of our animation out and brought them into KeyShot and rendered it out. The concept is pretty much the same, but when we have a lot of stuff going on, we would come under the cache setting and do an alembic cache. Okay, so I'm going to go to cache, alembic cache, export all. Time slider step is fine. You reset this. I think that's just the default yet. That should be good. Everything here should be good, so that shouldn't be an issue. And then export all. And then what this is going to do is it's going to go through, and it's basically going to take all the geometry in my scene and write it out to a file. And then that file I can import into other software packages. And what's neat about that is you can actually have an animation done in, let's say, Houdini, do a whole animation in there, and then export it out and bring it into Maya. And what happens is it's locked to that thing, so you can't change the animation. It's kind of like it's already set up and you're just using it inside your scene. Okay? Now when I come into Keyshot, this is number 7, we would just go to Import. We would find our stuff. This. Animation. It's in the cache folders where it saves it, Alembic, and then here's my stacker. A bunch of options. You can definitely look at these and see. I'll just say that too. Alright. So that should be okay. Import. Alright, so what it's going to do now is import all that stuff from my scene. And this is why it doesn't work. Because this surface here is not a straightforward animation. The way that I rigged it is not like a straightforward thing. So that's why that doesn't work the way we would hope it would. I think my Alt key is stuck down. That's weird. Alright. I don't know. Maybe. So inside here, I'm going to go to Window, Library, Materials. Here's my materials on this side. Window, Project, Scene. Here's my scene on this side. Okay? So all of our materials from before, they basically get trashed because those are Arnold materials. They're not Keyshot materials. So we would need to redo all of our materials. But what's cool about Keyshot is that it's pretty simple to do. So when I go into my scene here, this is like our outliner, so we can find our items. And let's say I grab this cue ball. Let's say I grab my platform. And it might just be Keyshot. Maybe they changed. I doubt it. I think it's just my stupid keyboard. I go over here to this materials library. I pick on a cool material. Let's say this is cloudy. That's cool. And it's blue. So I'm just going to drag this onto ground platform. And then I'm going to right click and material, copy material. Material, paste material, or paste linked material. There we go. Okay. So when I paste the link material, they're actually connected together. So that way if I change one, it'll change both. If I go to animation, which is down here, and play, the animation will play. You can see the whole thing going. I need more time. Animation wizard. No. Why don't I have more time? Oh, there's time settings. 9 seconds? Yeah, it's 9 seconds long. Where is... No, I was just zoomed in too much. There we go. There we go. So you can see how it automatically, like, we just drop the texture on there and it looks pretty sweet. If you've never used Keyshot before, it's, like, super awesome. Not for this project so much, but still super awesome. And then I would just go grab something else and do the same thing. So this is green. I would drop green on there. There are metals over here, so we can go to metallic, blue, sure. And then I can go and copy that material, paste down the other ones. Oops. Alright, you'll also notice that the circles, the ones we were using to animate, those also came in, which is kind of weird, but they did. I can actually just delete those. I don't actually need those pieces inside here, so I can just delete them. Okay, and then this one has its own render stuff too. We'll get more into this, but if you go to the render button here, here's the animation settings. here are some options, just like the previous stuff, just one slider, right? How many samples you want. And then you could render this out using render, add to render queue. Okay, so it is pretty neat how this works. And my cameras even come in too. Oh, this one I didn't export the camera. Right, I did right there. Why aren't I looking through it? There it is. All right, so the camera animation will also come into KeyShot, which is nice. It's just these other things didn't. You'll also notice that visibility didn't too. Like the visibility is animated on this object and those never popped away. So we can't do it for this one. Now I will show you another project that I did. I think it should be recent. Fall 20 fidget spinner. And then it says that it'll import Maya stuff. It won't. Or it didn't, at least to this one. What? Look at that again. Right. Oh. Yeah. Oops. And Maya. Why won't you open? Desktop backup A10. Oh, that's where I put it. There we go. So this is a 3D model. It's animated. Yeah, it's a fidget spinner. And it has motion blur on it and everything. So KeyShot is nice because you can kind of visualize it in real time with motion blur, with shadows, with all this stuff. And then when you go to do your final render, then it's simply a matter of cranking up the settings and then letting it go. Okay? So this one wasn't a complex rig, wasn't a complex animation. KeyShot was fine accepting it. This one was too complex for it. Okay, so apparently we found a limit of KeyShot. All right, so you're going to render your stuff in Maya using Arnold. So it's either going to be the batch render here, or you're going to use the little script. And I'll put this on canvas, and for right now, just so you can see where I'm putting it, I will put it right on the Make a Inst folder in 2540 in scripts. Okay. All right. Any questions on this?